me, Mr. DJ.
Hey, check this out. We got a great show coming your way.
From the ECSI Sports Studios, it's the Midday Market Report with Jeff Dawson.
Good afternoon, sports fans from all around the globe. I am the host, Jeff Dawson, East Coast Sports Investors, and this is your Midday Market Report, Part 2, the NFL Draft Preview with the star of the show, Mr. Ron from Ron A Sports. About 50 hours away till Carolina. You are on the clock. And wake up this morning, and it was like hell broke loose. One tweet, and next thing you know, Will Levis is your number one pick as the market crashed. But I talked to Ron backstage with a little conspiracy theory, wink, wink, on what I think really happened there. They were talking about it this morning on VSiN, where the Bryce Young big bad guys were waiting till they got the number down to like minus 600 or something and dropped the real money, as we all expect Bryce Young to be the number one pick. But after that, it's a crapshoot. 2, 3, 4. I mean, we know Houston. Are they going to draft a quarterback? Arizona wants to get the hell out of Dodge with the 3 pick and the 4. Indy's just sitting there dying to get a quarterback. But I'm going to let the expert talk about all this and much, much more. Without further ado, let's bring him in, the one and only Mr. Ron.
Good morning, Jeff. How's your Tuesday?
It's been crazy, but that's what we signed up for. How about yourself?
Yeah, it's a lot of shows, a lot of writing, a lot of papers, a lot of fact and fiction related to the draft. It's a wonderful time of the season, these next couple weeks, pre-draft winding down, and then the initial knee-jerk reactions, and then a little more detailed reactions. I've got another few weeks to go until the schedule comes out. So there's no off season for the NFL, and we're living it right now.
In the preview of the show, I talked about the madness. I wake up this morning and it was like hearing the sirens, like something is going on. I assume you were still maybe sleeping during some of this chaos, but you woke up this morning at some point and heard about the madness, saw the madness with your own eyes. Can you please explain to us what the hell was going on?
As near as I can tell, it's Will Levis himself who tweeted to somebody that he's going number one. So it's a very awkward situation. I'm not high on Will Levis, so I took it with a grain of salt to begin with. I actually, is what I told you a couple of minutes ago before we went live, I actually am leaning toward Houston not going quarterback at all at number 2. Number 1, sticking with Bryce Young. And then after that, Houston trades back up from number 12 and either goes for Levis or Stroud or Richardson or somebody. I think Houston gets edge rusher and quarterback out of the first 7 or so picks in this draft.
Our good buddy Russell just said he was about to head outside and do some chores. Got the alert that Ron is on. Chores will wait. Hell yes, Mr. Saylor. Let's go to number 2. We talked about this last week with you. Willie Anderson is the big name from Alabama. I know Russell would like to hear another name called out at number 2. Where do you lean at number 2?
I think I lean the edge rusher Wilson, but I wouldn't be surprised. I think we'll know within 24 hours. Houston generally will tip its hand about 24 hours before the draft. Will Anderson is the quote-unquote safer pick. He's going to give you 10 years. He's going to give you near all-pro status. Not like Aiden Hutchinson or Joey Bosa or Nick Bosa, but a very reliable cornerstone that you can build your defensive line around. I think this is going to be a defensive-minded team with their new head coach. I think it's one of those two for right now, and I think they stay there and draft that. Would I be surprised if it's Stroud or Levis? No, I wouldn't be surprised, but I just am leaning toward edge rusher first.
Right now on DraftKings, the number 2 pick, and I think Russell will enjoy this one. Willie Anderson is now at plus 330. Tyree Wilson at plus 200.
Yeah, I mean, it's basically it's a 4-horse race for that position unless they shock us again with some stunning cornerback move. But I don't think they have to go that route. You have to get to the quarterback. I think they're going to be a little more grounded in their approach.
So now we drop down to Arizona. I preface and say they want to get the hell out of Dodge. Hopefully someone will jump up there that wants a quarterback. As we go on further in the show, maybe you'll have a potential trade here and there. But if we say Arizona sticks at number 3, and let's say Houston does go Wilson, is the assumption here Willie Anderson?
If they stay and Wilson's gone, then it has to be Anderson, which would delight me personally, but also would be the right move for them. Now, this is a new GM, so we don't know his trade patterns. We know he's going to get a lot of buzz with 2 quarterbacks on the clock if Houston does go edge rusher like we're talking about at number 2. So the question is, how far back would they trade? I think they like either Anderson or Wilson. I also hear that they like Paris Johnson, the offensive lineman. Not a fantastic pick at number 3 overall. That's where you want to build your draft capital if you go offensive line. And I will say this, Arizona has a crying need for offensive line. So it wouldn't be a bad move to go in that direction.
Number 4, Indy. Absolutely would be a shocker if they did not take a quarterback. They've been tied to Levis. Now, with the news, especially the longer this goes with Stroud slipping, maybe it's a smokescreen. But if they're sitting there with their choice of 3 quarterbacks, Stroud still available with Levis and the Florida quarterback, where do they go?
Well, we're pretty sure it's quarterback, and I'm pretty sure Ballard is not tipping his hand one way, shape, or form. You know, I really had a feeling about a week ago that both Levis and Richardson would actually slide a little bit because we talked about it. Everybody's talked about it. Richardson is so unproven right now, 13 starts, but highly athletic. Levis, cannon for an arm, but there were concerns about his pocket awareness, a lot of sacks taken, so on and so forth. Now I'm almost feeling like the smokescreen is, what if Richardson is the guy that they want at number 4? I think if Stroud's there, I think that's the right choice, because if they end up starting Richardson or Levis early and that doesn't work out, Ballard's out of a job. He buys a little bit more time, I think, with Stroud. That's just a personal opinion. It's going to be a quarterback, but I think he's not tipping his hand yet.
Now the fun begins. 5, 6, and 7. I'll lump all those 3 together. The talk of Detroit and Vegas, maybe back-to-back cornerbacks. I know Detroit's been linked to Witherspoon, and then the thought process of the Raiders then going ahead and taking the other cornerback, I think, from Pitt. But I will give you the ball with potentially the 5, 6, and 7 spot.
Well, it's interesting. We've got a troubled guy in there, and that's Jalen Carter of Georgia. I can't see him going to Detroit with all the off-field stuff that they've had. I could see him going to Seattle. His over-under is roughly 6.5 draft slot. And so if he doesn't go to Seattle, he slides past pick 6. I think the Raiders would be interested in, I think it's a trading spot for the Raiders, for example. Maybe they go cornerback. Gonzalez is one of the guys, Witherspoon. Not that much difference between the two. I have Witherspoon slightly higher, but those who want to take a chance, you can get Gonzalez to Detroit at 6 or 7 to 1 or something like that. I think the Raiders want to trade out Houston, Tennessee, these Philadelphia if they want Carter. I think 7 is open for bargaining. And I think 5 and 6, there's no reason why they shouldn't stay. Seattle staying. I think they'd love to get Will Anderson if he dropped that far, which if there's a quarterback run, he could drop that far. Or maybe they could end up with Wilson, or maybe they get a different edge rusher. But I think Seattle stays, Carter's in the mix, Detroit stays, quarterback should be the pick, and 7 is up for possible trade.
8, if I remember correctly, is Atlanta. And it's funny because there's been a little smoke here coming, and there's no way in hell this is going to happen. But the running back from Texas, Mr. Robinson, has been mentioned. Now, Algier had an amazing year. They still have Cordarrelle Patterson. Is there any chance in holy hell that the Falcons could shock the world and take Robinson at 8?
It's hard to find a landing place for Robinson, who I really do believe if you got a system that's not pass centric, I would pick him in the top 10. I don't know if I would pick him in Atlanta, although Atlanta would use him because they're very run centric. They prefer not. We saw it last year with Mariota. We're going to see it with Ritter. They really want to have a very heavy run balance in the system. Would I do that? No, primarily because people are tired of me saying this, but if they don't draft an edge rusher, I'm going to skewer them in the draft, because every single year you're talking about a team that gets half as many sacks as the league average. 18 in 2021, 21 in 2022. This is last with not just one bullet, with several bullets. I don't care what Atlanta does. If it's not an edge rusher, I'm not interested.
And who's at number 9 now?
Chicago's at number 9, and that certainly looks like an offensive lineman spot.
Okay. Russell wants to know any player trades to watch for during the draft.
Yeah, player trades are going to be interesting. I had it on a different sheet. DeAndre Hopkins for Arizona could very easily be moved for a second-round pick. You could see Baltimore making a play on him. You could see Buffalo making a play on him. You could see the Jets making a play on him. Now they have that extra second-round pick. I voiced that opinion yesterday. Hopkins is probably the biggest guy that I think in there. There could be some cuts coming, but that would be day 2. Budda Baker is another guy to watch. He's really, if Hopkins goes, Baker doesn't want to be there as well. I don't think Austin Eckler would be traded, but we don't know if the Chargers, for some reason, all of a sudden had somebody fall to them, whether it be the Texas running back or if they got heavy on Gibbs of Alabama. Maybe that would be another nugget. I think there are 1 or 2 other names, but Hopkins is the main one to watch for.
Number 10 and the Eagles. I mean, again, I bring up Robinson because the fact is that we talked on the last show, a run-heavy team. They just paid for Jalen Hurts. We talked on your final show, you and I, about the Eagles moving on from Miles Sanders. My question to you, listen, I know you were in the Super Bowl. I know you just paid Jalen. You talk about making a buzz and a move for Robinson there, but do they have other needs that they need to address at 10 other than Robinson?
They lost a lot of players through free agency, and they're a team, Philly, that loves to rotate their defensive linemen. They like to have 2 full units, and they've done that for a number of years. So they want to be completely well-stocked there. Offensive line is where I'm hearing they're going to go first, but they could be in the Jalen Carter market, and they could go for an edge rusher. I think it's going to be O-line or D-line. I don't know that I would say it's 80-20 that they do not draft at 10 and 30, that one of those picks is changed. Up, down, sideways, Howie Rosen will do it any way, shape, or form. If I were them, I understand that Robinson would be an asset to them, but I would go O-line, D-line, or D-line, O-line in no particular order with the first 2 picks.
You talk about player trades as a name that's available, I guess not receiving any phone calls. We've talked about the Titans wanting to move up potentially to get into the quarterback carousel. Uh, any chance that Henry could be moved on Thursday?
I don't think so. I think this is his last year, though, so I wouldn't be surprised in this deep running back draft if Tennessee doesn't add a third round or fourth round running back. You can get starters in this draft in the third, fourth, fifth round at running back. I think they draft a potential quarterback in the third, fourth round and a potential running back in the third, fourth round, but they stick with Henry and they stick with Tannehill for this year because they're kind of an in-between team. They've gutted a lot of veterans, but they still feel they have an opportunity within their own division to sneak in another title. Now, I think while that's possible, the pecking order in the entire AFC, they're far down the totem pole right now because they've lost more than they've gained. But I see them sticking with Henry this year.
You talked about Hopkins. Rodgers now officially a Jet. If he was to move, you were talking some teams. I know he's hinted he would love to go to Kansas City. He had basically said, obviously, Buffalo would be another spot. Now with Rodgers there, with the extra pick, Ron, if you had to speculate, where would be the best landing spot for him, and B, where do you think he might end up?
Yeah, I think he's going to be traded. And I think they would like to trade him to the AFC. Usually teams don't want to trade within the same conference, although Arizona's not going to scare anybody. They should just take the best deal. I'm not sure where the best move is. I know Hopkins is older, but that doesn't mean he can't have 4, 5, 6 more productive years. Anything past 2 years means the Jets isn't the perfect landing spot. I think anybody who gets to play with Mahomes would be the perfect landing spot. So, it would be KC. I think Buffalo is a decent landing spot. Although when you share the wealth with Diggs as one wide receiver, you run the risk of a lot of flack and a lot of talk. And if you lose, you get a lot of brushback and kickback. So I think from his standpoint, I understand Kansas City would be best. But he'd relish the chance to be an alpha receiver with the Jets.
Now the fun in the draft, 10 to 20. Before I let you take over and run down 10 to 20, on my spreadsheet here, I keep getting these alerts for Joey Porter. And we talked about him last week. And I asked someone earlier this week at 14, is it too early for the Patriots to take a look at Porter? The smart play, obviously, would be the Steelers with his dad being a former Steeler. 19.5 doesn't get him. It's juiced for him to the over 19.5. Where does Ron see Mr. Porter landing?
Well, it's kind of a mixed bag. There are 2 or 3 pretty smart draft prop handicappers that I'm going head to head with in a couple of props this weekend, which I don't like to do, but I like to think that I have a good track record as well. So somebody wins and somebody loses. I have a play on Porter under 19.5, and I'm not sure exactly whether he goes. I don't think he goes to New England. I don't think he fits their profile. I think he fits Washington, believe it or not, him or Banks at 16. I think Washington's got one of the better front sevens in the NFL. That front four is scary, but their secondary is not scary whatsoever. So if they don't go offense, I think cornerback and Porter and cornerback and Banks of Maryland are definitely in play. Pittsburgh's in play for both of them. Detroit's in play if they don't go cornerback at 18. I'm not sure that Tampa would go that way. Tampa has other needs. So I think that's where we're going there. And you don't get another fit until Baltimore at 22. And we can get to Baltimore and Minnesota. I think they have other ideas. Washington, it's not mentioned. Nobody really knows what they're going to do because there's more off-field drama than on-field drama, right now. Washington's very quiet in terms of their draft intentions. But I like the fit for Washington or Pittsburgh the best.
All right, 10 to 20. I'm just going to give you the ball, have you take a look at your notes, anything that sticks out, anything that you see that might help everyone watching and listening for the Thursday?
Well, Green Bay insisted as part of the deal of going from 15 to 13 with the Rodgers. So they have somebody in mind. Last year it was Quay Walker. If Quay Walker's draft spot was 39 and a half, and then it ended at about 23 and a half. So I'm waiting for that word to come into my ears as saying, okay, Green Bay, who do you have this time? What are you looking for? Is it Nolan Smith? If he's available, is it the Iowa pass rusher, Lucas Van Ness, I think is his name. Something's going on in Green Bay that's caused them to move. It could be O-line, but I have a feeling it's going to be on the defensive side of the ball. The Jets moving back to 15 might cost them the offensive lineman that they want, or it might not. We're going to wait and see. I think if the Jets only have 5 picks. So my prediction for those watching the draft is if they don't take an offensive line, if they don't feel the one that they want is there, I think they're going to trade back and acquire more draft capital. And I'll give you a little off the wall trade. And these tend to hit, but I'm going really off the wall this time. How about New Orleans 29 to 15 with the Jets if the Jets trade the pick? Not out of character for New Orleans to take 7 or 8 picks and make it 5. But I think New Orleans is definitely trading up, and they're going to trade up anywhere from 23, 22 to 15. So watch the Jets closely. Beyond that, I think Pittsburgh, yes, we're going to look at cornerback in this particular spot. And Seattle and Detroit are fascinating, and same with Tampa. We could see a running back in this spot for Tampa. We could even see a running back for Detroit for all we know.
And you talked about on our last show how deep rounds 3, 4, and 5 are for the backs. A crazy prop that DraftKings is proposing for plus money again is this one, and I know you're going to poo-poo it, so that's why you're here. Robinson in the top 10 with Gibbs in the first round gets you a real nice plus ticket. No chance?
Oh, yes, there's a chance. How much is the plus, though?
I thought I heard like plus 300.
Okay. I would probably price it right around there, 250, 300. So I wouldn't probably pull the trigger, but sure, it can happen because Robinson compares favorably to backs that have been drafted in the top 10 in the past. The only difference is we're in a new era where running backs tend to go a little bit later. But I think Robinson has a top 10 profile. So I wouldn't poo-poo that, and especially the way Gibbs is gaining traction. It makes sense because we had a plus 350 on 1.5 running backs going in the first round. We may have even touched upon that last week. That number is now something like minus 170.
Is Gibbs the guy to sneak into the first round?
Gibbs is the guy. You could go with UCLA Charbonneau at 9 to 1 to get into the first round, but most likely you're going to see him. There's some unproven areas to his game. He does have some home run hitting skill, but Gibbs is a safer pick. After all, he had an incredible yards per carry figure with Georgia Tech, a pretty run dominant team, and he carried that over to Alabama. Plus, he displayed pass catching ability, over 40 catches last year. If you want to be a complete running back, if you want to be a first round running back, you have to do more than run the ball.
You talked about potentially New Orleans making a big jump to move up. Last year, the splash started right around 13, 14 with the A.J. Brown trade there. Then the dominoes started to fall. Would the Saints be making a power move like that for the tight end? Or is that kind of crazy to think? Or where do you think the first tight end, and I'm hearing Mayer, will end up following?
Yeah, it's horses for courses here. If the first tight end goes to the Chargers, for example, at 21, they may prefer Kincaid over Mayer. When it was priced at 160, I thought that was a little ridiculous. Mayer shouldn't be priced at 160, but I think it's closer to 55, 45. I wouldn't be surprised which one really goes first. It just depends on what style of offense they go to. We're probably looking at I mean, Detroit at 18, they need a tight end. I don't see a tight end going before then, although there's been some talk that Green Bay would take a tight end with their pick. But to move from 15 to 13 to take a tight end that would be available at 15, that doesn't make sense to me. They'd be moving ahead of New England, and maybe they have a feeling New England could use a tight end. Maybe so, but that's not usually a position New England would feature on right now. But overall, I think the tight ends start coming off, maybe with the Chargers, and it could go all the way to Cincinnati at 28. So 21 to 28 for the top two tight ends.
You talked about Green Bay switching, going from 15 to 13. That's about the spot that the Ohio State wide receiver has kind of been speculated. Now, they've gone defense the whole time or traded down, or they stunned the world a few years ago and grabbed Jordan Love and not got Rodgers any weapons. There's no way in holy hell that they move up to 13 and just say, hey, Aaron, look at this. We're drafting an offensive player, would they?
Well, out of spite, maybe they would do that. But I think they were quoted as saying there was a reason we moved to 15 to 13. And it's kind of up to you guys in the press to figure that out. They basically said the deal wouldn't have been done if they couldn't move 15 to 13. So that has me thinking, well, they're not looking wide receiver there because you can get a wide receiver, an unpolished wide receiver. All of them are not any guarantees beyond 13. Yeah, New England might go wide receiver at 14, but New England's track record of drafting wide receivers is dismal, to say the least. So I don't think that would be where Green Bay goes. So I think the wide receivers fall in this draft.
20 till the end of the first round. What does your sheet say?
Baltimore and Minnesota, I could see both of them looking for trade partners to move out. Both Baltimore and Minnesota lack a second round pick. We know what Baltimore's MO has been for years and years of having continuity at GM and assistant GM. They like to trade back a little bit in the draft, build up draft capital. Last year, they had 6 fourth-round picks, kind of a world record. So I see Baltimore trading back. And we saw in his first year, the new GM of Minnesota was just like the old GM, Spielman. They're trading left, they're trading right, they're trading center. They went from 12 to 32 last year. I could easily see them trading out of the spot. And there's a couple of teams that I would have in mind moving up. It could be another Minnesota-Detroit Lion trade because I don't think the Lions are going to stick with 5 of the first 85 picks. I think they're going to take 1 or 2 of those and move up. Could be Green Bay moving up. We mentioned the 2 picks, so trading in the division. Kansas City could move up if they've really targeted somebody. Kansas City has something like 10 or 11 picks. There are not 10 roster spots available for Kansas City. There's no reason to keep 10 picks. Buffalo could move up. So that's what I see out of those 2 teams. Cincinnati's going to have a fascinating decision when it comes to them, what they do. I'm not exactly sure. New Orleans, like I said, I think they're moving up. And Philadelphia, I think we're going to see in this range, Jeff, a lot of trades more than anything. Even Jacksonville might trade up as opposed to down because Jacksonville's the same team that took 12 picks and made them into 7 last year, which I thought was a terrible decision in such a deep draft last year. But I'm not invited to any Christmas parties with their GMs. So.
The Cincinnati, they move on from Mixon. If they move on from Mixon, potential landing spot for Gibbs there.
I think it is a potential landing spot for Gibbs. If it's not a landing spot for Gibbs, because now he could be even in Dallas, he could be somewhere else. If it's not a landing spot for Gibbs, I still think Cincinnati takes a relatively named running back later on. And I think they've asked Mixon to take a pay cut. I think they just prefer to just cut him altogether. So if there's no reason to do it now. Wait to see what you pick up in the draft. And if they're satisfied, then you cut salary.
Give us some thought process. Everyone's board is different, whether you're shopping at DraftKings, whether you're shopping at FanDuel. the Circa, or wherever you're shopping at your local watering hole, your barber shop. Is there any names? We know that you have a lot of plays in there, but for the people watching the people that really love you, Ron, like we do here, some names, maybe some numbers, some values that we could do some value shopping with.
Well, I'm going to tease the audience, because there will be an article coming out late tonight or tomorrow morning. I'm There's a lot of things that you can have right now that make sense. Chicago going offensive line at a decent price. Tennessee going offensive line at a decent price and stuff like that. But I put together an article where the back half of the article has players or teams at with every single draft proposition at plus 200 all the way up to plus 4,000.
Wow.
So, it only takes one or two of these to hit. I think I had about 8 or 9 of them last year, and 2 of them hit. One was plus 800 and one was plus 3,000. So it doesn't take much. You can miss on 12 of them, and if the 13th hits and it's plus 3,000, it works. So maybe we go over, maybe not. But I have some opinions about Dallas, the Jets, Philly, Tampa, Jalen Carter. So I'm going to tease that one out. I do think there are some interesting situations going on in the first round. Does somebody like Jalen Hyatt go in the first round as a surprise because the wide receivers are so muddled? Who's that third tight end that might get into the first round? Is it Luke Musgrave, who only played 2 games at Oregon State last year, but had 11 catches and has the pedigree and bloodlines to go in the first round? Is it George Washington, who has the athletic skills of a Vernon Davis, who went, I think, 10th overall in the draft? Does he sneak in, or are all these tight ends really second round tight ends? I think there could be a center that actually goes in the first round that we're not thinking about. Maybe a Joe Tippmann, or maybe John Michael Schmitz. They're not priced at plus 200, but they are interesting people to think of. If there's an offensive line run like we think there's going to be, somebody's going to reach for a second round talent in the first round because they need offensive line. And maybe it's not a bad thing if the need is that drastic and they need a center. But there's a couple of names I think could sneak into the first round at center.
Anyone watching and listening that does not have Ron's 32-page draft guide, go to eastcoastsportsinvestors.com. Pause for 5 seconds. There'll be a drop down right there. You can download that, follow it along with the draft Thursday, Friday, Saturday. It's an amazing time of year, as you always like to say, Ron. It's Christmas time all over. Your work has just begun, I know, because once the draft is over, then it's back to pen and pad, and the fun really begins. But as we always like to do here, Ron, as we close up with you, we give you the stage for the final thoughts, some hints, some ideas, or whatever you'd like to share with the public now.
Okay. Well, first, I'm not done writing before the draft. You'll see something come out on Thursday, probably, for reading, where I actually kind of scope out each team and what they might be thinking, and put in some names for deep sleepers and stuff like that. So there's going to be one more article coming out then. And early Friday, I stay up late on Thursday night and I give my first round impressions, all in bullet points. So look for that. It's one very long page about what teams did right or wrong. And I got to tell you, Jeff, I'm expecting a little bit of comedy in my writing this year, because it's not a clean draft like last year. I haven't finalized my board. I have to do that in order to get this article out. But last year I had a world record 280 draftable players. I think it was 279. Usually that number is in the 230s, but with the super seniors and the COVID and everything, it jumped up. And a tremendous number, 32 guys with first round grades. This year we're looking at most 24 people with first round grades. And when I finalize my pre-draft board, probably back to 240 or so guys with eligible to be drafted. There's 259 spots, but not enough people, I think, that are NFL worthy. And I think we're going to see some teams misfire. So hopefully those out there listening and watching, your favorite team will not be one of the ones misfiring, but there are some teams I worry about. I'm going to give you an interesting team, Las Vegas. They butchered the draft in so many years. I mean, last year they went for positions that don't carry any value whatsoever. 2 running backs behind Josh Jacobs, 2 offensive guards, a defensive tackle, and 1 other pick. It was a waste of time. This year they have 10 picks. We talked about they may trade down, they may stay and take somebody. I'm cautiously optimistic, and I don't know why, that they may actually do something well in the draft. So it's just one of the intriguing storylines that makes me smile and makes me think about something unpredictable. The Jets and the Giants and Seattle having a conventional draft last year, that was so unpredictable to me. And let me close, unless you have any questions, with one other draft nugget. It's kind of a weird one, but there are 5 teams that do not have a first round pick in this draft. They are, let's see if I know that, the Rams, Miami, Denver, Cleveland, and San Francisco. Did you know that all 5 of those teams also did not have a first round pick in 2022?
Wow.
That's unusual. Just a little draft nugget out there.
When you bring up San Francisco, and again, you talked last week about the fact that they went through 3 quarterbacks, the uncertainty of Purdy, obviously the uncertainty of Trey Lance. There's been, rumors, and that's all it is, speculation, that San Fran could try to use Trey Lance as a pawn for someone that was looking for a quarterback that says, hey, you know what? You can get a guy that's been in the league a couple of years, still unproven, but better than this class. Still poo-poo and no chance that they would even think about something like that?
I think they'd have to be blown away. And I think they're getting offers, but my guess is, and I know one for a fact, but my guess overall is that they're getting lowball offers. The best people are offering them might be a mid number 2. Maybe somebody will on draft day say, hey, how about we're getting to the second round. Maybe there's somebody you want. I'll trade pick 34 or 35 or something for him. Maybe they would consider it. But San Francisco is so close in a lot of ways. And Lance is a smart guy. He just can't get on and stay on the field. His season was canceled in college due to COVID. They played a practice game. That's all. He sat his first year as a rookie, which made sense because he didn't have enough reps in college. He gets hurt on the first game of the season in the NFL last year, and then Purdy comes in. We don't know how good Purdy is. We don't know how good Lance is. We don't know how effective Sam Darnold will be with an actual tight end and an offensive line that is better than ever he's played for. But if I'm San Francisco, I want all 3 because I'm thinking deep run. I don't want to be in that situation where you have a right-hander throwing left-handed passes in the NFC Championship game like a year ago.
I'll ask you this last final question, and obviously, if available at some point next week where we can have you on to go over the draft, who was the shockers, who failed, give you actually a little ECSI and wrong report card on how each GM and team did. But if I said, Ron, shock the world, whether it was someone that went where they shouldn't have, or someone out of the blue like Mahomes, KC goes up 15 spots or whatever it was. I'm talking to you next Tuesday at 3:30, 4:30, whatever the time is. Who's the player or which team shocks the world? And that would be?
I would think Richardson could shock the world one way or another. Maybe he's out of the first round. Maybe he's the 4th overall selection. Richardson is, talk has died down. Remember when he got steamed from like 4,000 to 1 down to 5 to 1 or 4 to 1, and now he's back completely out of the picture for number 1, 2, 3, 4. You could get good odds. He could shock the world. He could be in Indy, for example. He could be in Houston, for example. He could go in the top 7, or he could kind of disappear for a while and then somebody has to trade up to get him. He's probably the first person on my list. Would it be shocking if Carter fell out? I know probably 15 to 20 teams don't even have Jalen Carter, on their draft board. They would not draft him. But of the others, he's still a first round talent. The problem is that the track record of motivation and that work ethic tends to be repeatable. And at some point in his career, and I hope I'm wrong, there's a suspension waiting to happen or a down year after he sees all that money. I would be worried about him, and he wouldn't be on my team.
Always a pleasure. I blink, Ron, and it's 41 going on 42 minutes. I could talk forever. Your wife probably says, "Don't you get on with that ECSI guy." Jeez, Ron.
She likes you.
Okay. Tell her thank you. The one and only Mr. Ron. Follow him on Twitter, obviously at Ron A Sports. Follow all his work. Amazing work. Next week we'll catch up with you and we'll do the report card. Best of luck with all your picks and selections. We'll obviously pick your brain on how well you did. And probably after this year, there'll be a few more spots lowering your price tags on your wages on these drafts moving forward.
Yeah, unfortunately true. But Jeff, thanks for having me on. It's always good to talk with you.
Thank you to everyone watching and listen. Go follow Ron at Ron A Sports. Myself is going to take a little break. I'll be back around 6:45 with Scotty Webb, and we'll be talking some MLB baseball. Everyone, enjoy your dinner. Thanks again to Ron, and we will see you soon.